Hello and welcome to our fourth year of Grow with Inbound. Our first 2 years were live events in central London, but this year, like last year, we're fully virtual. And this year we are, of course, fully international. And we might even throw in some ISO accreditation conversations if you're interested. But be careful who you ask. There are some of us that get very excited about international standards. Anyway, we started our day in Singapore with Irina Churchkina from Payment Specialist Tunes, being interviewed by our CMO, Matt Creswick. And we then moved on for a great session with a friend of Hubble, David Phelan, at On Deck in Singapore, just as they were finishing their day and everyone in the UK was still drinking coffee. Then we traveled to Dublin and Berlin to visit HubSpot in the middle of the day and interview one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, the top man in HubSpot EMEA, that's Christian Kinnear, and also the man who leads HubSpot in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, the marvelous Gregor Huffenreuter. Then we headed to Cape Town, where our CSO, Darren Smith, interviewed fellow South African Kyle Tate from DocuSign around all things sales coaching. And just before this session, if you were tuned in, you'd have seen Darren in conversation with the lovely Gail Wheaton, Director of Go-to-Market Strategy at HubSpot. We have 10 different sessions running with 20 fantastic presenters who are joining us from 4 continents and all in numerous different time zones. Today, you are joining marketers, salespeople, and customer service experts from all around, including HubSpot partners that we work with from across the world. We're so pleased you've been able to join us. Thank you for taking the time out in your day to do so. We hope you'll find this both educational and informative. Now let's get started. I'd like to introduce my guest, Yamini Rangan, the Chief Executive at HubSpot. She's an extraordinary lady and a very experienced executive. She joined HubSpot as their first ever Chief Customer Officer, overseeing the marketing, sales, and services teams. She's a tech industry specialist with more than 24 years of experience, previously serving as Chief Customer Officer at Dropbox. Before Dropbox, she was VP of Sales Strategy and Ops at Workday, where she helped quadruple revenue and scaled the sales organization. Prior to this, she was at SAP, where she held various leadership roles in strategy, pre-sales, and value-based selling. She has a degree in electronic engineering. She has a master's in computer engineering, and she has an MBA from Berkeley. 2019 saw Yamini recognized as one of the most influential women in business by the San Francisco Business Times. Out of work, she's very serious about her yoga, and she also tries to get in 3 Orange Theory fitness classes a week. And she really does believe in looking after herself and tries hard on her work-life balance, which when you've got 2 teenage boys is a major challenge. She's a big fan of TED Talks. She loves the storytelling and inspiration that comes from it. And she also tells me she has a love of cooking. And I think she's something of a fan of the Great British Bake Off. That's enough from me. Let's talk to Yamini. Hello and welcome to Grow with Inbound.
Oh, thank you so much. That was quite an introduction, but I will say I'm a huge fan of the British Baking Show and watch it with my son, and we try to replicate some of the recipes from it. So you definitely touched a passion of mine and our families.
Yes, it's definitely on our viewing list here as well. Yamini, so let's dive in and just talk a little bit about you. You joined HubSpot in January 2020, came in as Chief Customer Officer, but that's just 2 months before the pandemic hit with full force. How was joining HubSpot at that sort of time?
I mean, it was an incredibly crazy, pivotal year, as it was for, I think, all of humanity, Bob. You're right. I joined HubSpot in January 2020, and my role was to bring together what we call the flywheel team. You're used to us talking about the flywheel, but it's really bringing all of the customer-facing functions across marketing, sales, and customer success, and focusing on providing a delightful customer experience. That was my role. And 2 months into it, and I actually remember I'd just visited HubSpot. You mentioned HubSpot. I just visited HubSpot and came back to the US, and the borders were literally shutting down, and we had to make a pretty big pivot in terms of where we focused. And it was a surreal, time. And I will tell you that this is when first principles really come into play. Our first principle was solving for our customer and solving for our partners. And so in the 5 to 7 days following that period in March, we made some pretty significant decisions, and you knew about it, right? We announced a whole customer relief program. We made changes to our products to make it much more accessible to all of our customers so they could then therefore be connected to their customers. We advanced commissions to a lot of our Platinum Plus partners. And so we rolled out a set of key decisions in a matter of 5 days. Normally that would have taken us a planning process of 5 months. And so, it really, really helps to have clear first principles, which in our case is solving for the customer. And I'd say that, last year was a pretty pivotal year, and this year has continued to be so. We're all operating under a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and I certainly feel that my job and my focus has been to consume as much of that uncertainty and deliver clarity to our employees, to our partners, to our customers, and the community at large.
Right. It's been a something of a roller coaster. Therefore, in the time that you've been in the role, you started as CEO just at the beginning of September. Congratulations, of course.
Thank you.
I think that. How did you actually find out that you were in the running for being CEO?
I'm saying, like, every March something happens. So now I'm going to be really, really careful about every March. Last March, it was obviously the pandemic. And as you know, Bob, earlier this year in March, Brian Halligan, who's our co-founder as well as CEO for 15 years, he met with an unfortunate accident. He's great. He's come back to the business. He's fully recovered. But March was a pretty tenuous time, and he needed the time and the space to recover. So at that time, he actually called and said, "Hey, I need you to run the company. I think you have a great leadership team. Lean on them and keep the company going." And so while the official transition was a couple of months ago in September, I've been running the organization since March. The call was very interesting. I got a call from Brian a few months ago, and we were kind of chit-chatting. I was asking how he was doing, and he goes, "Well, we need to talk." And when you hear those words, it's typically not something great. And I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know where this is going." And Brian, and you've known Brian for years, he pulls out a presentation and starts walking me through his decision-making process. I still didn't quite realize where he was going. And then he says, "Therefore, I just recommended to the board that you be the next CEO." And it was, again, a very emotional moment for two reasons. One is that stepping into the shoes of a fantastic, legendary CEO like Brian, that carries a significant amount of weight, and I have tremendous amount of respect for what Brian and Dharmesh have created at HubSpot, and so that was an enormity of that moment. And then the second part of it is that I grew up in India, super small town, and my kind of life flashed in front of me from just starting in a small town with not a lot of infrastructure, did not even have a proper English, high school all the way. And so moved schools. So my life kind of flashed from growing up in India to my journey here to, being, in such an amazing place where I have the opportunity to take on an organization like HubSpot. And so it's just an emotional moment, thrilling, and I'm really grateful. HubSpot is just a fantastic organization that is mission driven. And I'm grateful that I have the ability to lead this organization into its next chapter.
That's fantastic. He's a tough act to follow, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I'm not shopping in his aisle of shoes. I'm kind of going to a different aisle myself here.
So if you started at the beginning of September and we're into officially, that is, and we're into mid-November, you're coming up on that sort of fabled first 100 days. It sounds like you had a bit of an extra lead-in over that period, but that means that you've sort of got your feet under the desk and you're getting an eye on those things that you need to focus on. Tell us a little about your plans.
Well, I have a few more days for 100, so you're making me nervous with the mention of 100 days. I still have a few more days here. But look, I think, having been at HubSpot, having really, appreciated the foundations that Brian and Dharmesh have put in place for HubSpot to grow and for us to serve our customers, it's a little bit easier. I'd say the focus has been a couple of fold. First off, I've kind of started a listening tour. Anytime I've transitioned roles or organizations, I kind of start with seeking to understand rather than seeking to be understood. That has been a foundational first principle for me. And so as I stepped into this role, I started with listening deeply to our customers, to our partners, as well as employees. So I am almost done. I think I've spoken with about 60 to 75 people across all of those. And I've asked some basic questions in terms of the biggest opportunities, the biggest risks, as well as where we should focus as an organization to serve our customers. And that listening has led to kind of solidification of the strategy. And we're in a path. Our strategy for the past couple of years have been working really well. And it's made it clear in my mind in terms of where we need to continue to double down, as well as where we need to continue to invest. And so I'm finishing up on that tour. What is also important is really next year, where are we focused on as an organization and where are we investing? And we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go on. But I think those are the biggest areas that I'm focused on and pretty excited about getting closer to the first 100 days.
That's great. You're taking on quite a role here. The idea of being CEO of a New York stock market listed company, it's a big deal. And it comes with certain expectations. Are there tough bits about that? How do you find the whole process of having to be on show, as it were, as the leader of such an organization?
Yeah, you know what? You can't let it get to you, and I don't think I wake up in the morning thinking about the enormity of the role. I think I wake up in the morning thinking about who are the primary stakeholders and how are we serving them. And for me, it comes down to serving our customers exceptionally well, making sure that our partners are well invested in, and so you can all scale with us, and making sure that employees have a great environment where they can do the best work. I think that's what I get up in the morning thinking about. And there is just gratitude. I get up with a lot of feeling of gratitude that I get to lead an organization. Look, I'm not an entrepreneur. Brian and Dharmesh were, but if I had been an entrepreneur, this would have literally been the kind of organization that I would have created. So I get up feeling grateful for leading an organization like HubSpot. Like every role, there are tough bits and there are just amazing bits. The amazing bits is exactly what I said. And I think the tougher part is just the sheer breadth and volume of things that come to you. I mean, you know this, you lead an organization. I think on any given day, you don't know what's going to come sideways at you and from all directions. And so you're going to have to prioritize, you're going to have to sequence, and you're going to have to really depend on just a fantastic leadership team that you can delegate to. And help them grow as well. And so I get very excited about that.
So we should talk perhaps about HubSpot in terms of the software itself.
Yeah.
When I look back on, well, we joined as a partner in 2012. That was when I first met Brian and G2.
Early days, very early days.
Long time ago, yeah. And I think you'd probably acknowledge it was the early days for a marketing automation tool at the time. You've come a long way, long way in those nearly 10 years since, and the positioning's changing all the time. We're growing up with the customers that we're dealing with, and the product grows up and up the whole time, which is fantastic. But you've had a pretty significant shift towards that of CRM platform. And I wonder whether you could just talk a little about the change of positioning for the business in that respect.
Well, I think there is a change in buyer expectation. That's what is fundamental. So if you really step back and think about how buyers have changed over the last decade and how buyer expectations have changed, HubSpot, and certainly my passion is really about understanding where buyers are changing and making sure that we are delivering. And Brian Dharmesh would say the same thing. I think the first change was why HubSpot got founded. And the first change, if you step back, was that B2B buyers were getting really immune to the way they were being marketed to, and maybe even annoyed at the way that they were getting marketed to. And if you step way back, the time, Bob, when you would get a call on a Friday evening when you're just going to have dinner with your family, and that would be someone trying to market you something. And interruption marketing was what was happening back then, and that was absolutely not valuable for the buyer. And therefore, the insight that Brian Dharmesh had as they started the company was that there's a better way, and inbound turns out is the better way, where you deliver digital content and you make it exceptionally valuable. And if you do provide value, then people are going to come to you. And that's how you attract buyers, not by how it was being done back then. So that's when we, as you said, got started as a marketing app and automation company. Now, 2 to 3 years ago, another massive shift, was happening in terms of buyer behavior and expectations. Buyers were kind of not, they wanted better, delightful customer experience. They just didn't want to buy something and be left at that point. They wanted a better, delightful customer experience. Why? Because that's what we've been getting on the consumer side. We've seen massive changes in the consumer world where buying a car is just super easy and you can do everything online right now, not just buying a book. And so there's been this massive transformation. And so that led us to an insight that it's not about the funnel of getting a lead and closing and winning a customer. It is about the flywheel of putting the customer at the center and how we attract, engage, and delight that customer is where the magic is. And therefore, we've made the transition from marketing app to a CRM suite to a CRM platform so that we can serve that need of buyer expectations within the market. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing us do from a product as well as a company strategy perspective.
There are a lot of excellent CRMs out there. What do you think HubSpot differentiates itself on?
Yeah, this is a great question. I started my career many moons ago in CRM. And at that time, CRM was much more about seller. I was a seller, I was in sales, and I had a contact record, and you pulled up that contact record and called someone within a company, and that's what CRM enabled you to do. I think it has completely changed. Now it's all about the buyer. The buyer can start at the website. The buyer can interact by downloading your free product and trialing your free product, or they may choose a much more traditional way of talking to a representative within a company, and it depends on where they are in the journey. So first off, CRM needs to be much more about the buyer empowerment, not really about the seller enablement. And so I think there is a very different expectation of CRM within the market. And then the second part is that there is a traditional playbook for CRM companies where when they understand this journey, they start, cobbling different parts of technology together and putting it together. And we've taken a completely different approach. The approach that we have taken is to deliver a crafted solution across the entire buyer's journey, whether it's marketing or sales or customer success or operations team that fuel all of the front office. And we are delivering delightful customer experiences and helping our customers deliver those kinds of delightful customer experiences. And that crafted approach is very, very different. It's very, very unique. A mid-market company, which is certainly the segment that we serve, right? A small and mid-market company, they don't have tens of resources, tens of developers that are spending all their time, cobbling together a whole tech stack that is complex. They want something that is simple yet powerful and delivers delightful experiences. And so our approach of crafted solutions is just completely unique.
That's great. Thank you. But you mentioned a little earlier on one of my favorite things about HubSpot, which is inbound.
Yes.
And I've been a fan for many years. I think there's that quite wonderful feeling about standing at the top of the escalators going down into that massive area of Club Inbound that there's quite nothing like it. The virtual events that you guys have pulled together the last 2 years have been extraordinary. I wonder whether you share that love of inbound? I'm sure you do. What's your favorite part? What do you enjoy most about inbound?
Oh, I mean, I completely agree with you. It's just the feeling of being there at inbound and meeting customers, meeting partners, and really thinking about where our industry is going. I think there is a special feeling. I will tell you that this year, although we didn't have face-to-face interactions, the week of inbound, I spent a lot of time doing one-on-one interactions with customers and partners. I had dozens of conversations every day, 30 minutes, and that was a special part. I mean, certainly as at inbound, as you know, we did a number of new product launches, and we talked about the direction that we're going and where we think the industry is headed. But for me, those one-on-one conversations and catching up with folks and also getting feedback from our partner and customer community was just really special.
You had a few new products.
That's right.
Yeah. Would you like to remind us of some of the highlights?
Oh, I mean, you're asking me to go off and talk about something that I'm really excited about and passionate about. Look, we are building the #1 CRM platform for scaling companies. That's our vision, and that's what we want to be exceptionally good at. And a lot of the product announcements that we made at Inbound really lines up to that vision of delivering a very customer-centric, connected and crafted CRM for scaling companies. There are a few things that I'm particularly excited about. We launched Operations Hub this year, right? That's a completely new hub. And you and I have talked about this. There's a whole new persona, which is the RevOps persona, and they have the tough job of delivering insights to all of the front office leaders. And so earlier this year, we launched Operations Hub Starter as well as Pro. And then at Inbound, we launched Operations Hub Enterprise, which is clearly focused on reporting. And when you're clearly focused on reporting, you have to clearly get the data right. And so I'm pretty excited about the step change in terms of how we've brought reporting as well as some key powerhouse features like data sync in place. And so that's a exciting launch for us. You heard us launch, HubSpot payments. Now that's a pretty big, area for us to, and we think it's a pretty long-term opportunity for HubSpot. And so we're excited about our payments offering and how that will enable our customers to sell both touchlessly as well as improve, in terms of rep-driven sales process. And it's a long-term opportunity that we're beginning to invest in, that we're excited about. And then we made some pretty big announcements in terms of features going up market. Sandboxes, business units are pretty big. Customer portal, which is a feature for our service hub, which we think is going to be needle moving. So a bunch of upmarket related product launches. So like I said, I could go on, but those would be the three categories that I'm really excited about.
That's great. While I have you here, maybe I can just ask you a little bit about the future. Just ask you to look ahead and maybe give us some indications of what we might be able to expect over the next few years from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, this is what, both myself as the leadership team have been focused on for the past, few months, is just to articulate the clear strategy. And we have 4 strategic pillars, Bob. The first one I mentioned earlier, which is we want to build a world-class CRM platform. And that means we will continue to invest in hubs that are existing hubs, as well as continue to invest in building new hubs like Operations Hub that we did this year. And we will also continue to invest in platform. So that's our number 1 strategic pillar, is to build a world-class CRM platform that can help scaling companies. The second part of our strategic pillar is really to strengthen our segmentation approach. Now, you've been a long-standing partner within the HubSpot ecosystem, and you know that we operate in the 1 to 2,000 employee segment. And within that segment, the 20 to 200, that kind of mid-market segment, that has been our sweet spot for many, many years, both from a product as well as go-to-market perspective. Our strategy is we want to optimize both product as well as go-to-market in every part of the segments that we operate in. So for 2 to 20, this is going to be product-led growth, touchless, and maybe chat-assisted sales, and the product experience needs to be exceptionally great. And then for the 200 to 2,000, which we call the upmarket segment, we're investing in terms of product as well as go-to-market and sales enablement. And so that's our second strategic pillar. The third pillar of our strategy is investing in commerce as well as payments. And as I just said, this is something that we launched and announced at Inbound. And we think that commerce enabled CRM is a powerful, unique value to help our customers grow. And so that's the third strategic pillar. And then the fourth one is that we want to invest so we can scale HubSpot in a very sustainable manner. So we're focused on diversity as well as initiatives to improve our environmental impact and continue to build customer trust. And so those are the 4 strategic pillars, and a lot of the investments that we're making as we now think about 2022 and even going forward, are going to be aligned around those key pillars for our strategy.
That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yamini, where are you? Where are you in the world at the moment?
I'm right outside San Francisco. It's really, actually doesn't matter where we are nowadays. And, most of my calls, virtual calls, I start with, where in the world are you now? And it's always great because you get different responses. But I live right outside San Francisco, Northern California.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And a recent piece of news over here is that HubSpot's opening an office in London, coming up very soon, I understand.
Yeah.
Where do you like to travel? Is there a chance that we might see you over here to cut a ribbon?
Absolutely. Absolutely. London is like my favorite. And I'll say that, the best Indian food outside of India is in London. And any chance that I get to travel, I do. And, you're going to have to give me some, great recommendations when I come there next. But I'm hoping, next year, maybe.
Got a couple of top Indian restaurants earmarked for you straight away. No problem.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Well, the people in San Francisco obviously like you, and they're pretty proud of you. You're being voted the most influential woman in business. Was an impressive piece in itself from San Francisco Business Times, I believe. I wonder whether you have, as a role model, which you undoubtedly are, for women in business, do you have any advice for our aspiring team of ladies in Hubble and for our listeners here?
Oh, that's very kind. I was one of 100. I was not the one, so I'm definitely not letting anything get to my head. But yeah, I'll tell you that it's just great to be here at this point within the industry. I think we still have a long way to go to have women and people of color in masses represented in leadership, within our industry. And there's a lot that we can do. But I'll say, in terms of all of you aspiring out there, it's really up to you. I mean, be great advocates for yourself. If you really want to have a great ambition and want to be in the C-suite, be advocates for yourself. Find great mentors and find great sponsors who maybe are a few steps ahead of you and can help you and guide you in the process. And, don't try to be, a perfectionist. I think that there's a stat somewhere that women typically look at a job description, and unless they check 90% of the boxes, they typically don't raise their hand. And I've seen this, of myself early in my career, and I see this of other women. You don't need to be perfect, and you don't need to have all the boxes checked in order for you to raise your hand and go for it. And so I'd say that, think about what you want to do. There is absolutely a way to balance great careers and great families. It's not easy, but it is possible. And so dream big and go for it.
Fantastic. You talk about mentors along the way there and the importance of them.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that you look up to? Do you have a business hero, someone that whose advice that you treasure?
Well, I'll say, I have a whole, personal board, and these are people that I have admired, that I have learned tremendously from, that I call back when I need to, and they're kind of my sounding boards. And I've really been fortunate to have a lot of different people. I'll say, one of my mentors was my former boss at Workday. I spent many years working for him. He was at the time the COO of the company, and tremendous operating experience and expertise. Mike Stanky is his name. And, I go to him, we have a quarterly call, and I'll be like, hey, these are the two things that are top of mind. And what do you think? And he'll typically have this one-liner, something super pithy. And I'm like, that is exactly right. And so I take that and I go for it. And I've had many such mentors in my life. And it's important. I think you can't just go out and search for mentors. You really have to think about what are the 2 or 3 things that you're working on right now? Who is doing that exceptionally well that you can learn from? And make a very specific request of that mentor that, let's say, you want to improve your presentation skills or communication skills. Who's doing that really well that you want to look up to? Go and make a specific request and ask specific questions and learn from them. I think that's the approach that I have taken to learning from other great leaders.
You're giving some fine advice. One more as we get towards the end of our session. Is there any advice that you'd give to people in business as we move into 2022? A tip or a suggestion, perhaps?
Well, I mean, Bob, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but you know, the world last couple of years have been just exceptionally unique circumstances, pivotal years, years where some businesses have accelerated, other businesses are, you know, surviving, thriving, and you know, catching up. I'll tell you, like next year, who knows what it brings, but I do think it's going to become more hybrid. And you know, this year, while we said hybrid, most of us remained, you know, fairly remote, and so next year is going to become even more hybrid. So, what does that actually mean when we are operating in a truly flexible hybrid environment for our customers, for our employees, you know, for our partners? How do we make, you know, hybrid conferences work? How do we make hybrid work environments? How do we keep our employees motivated, inspired, and engaged when, you know, some of them might never see each other while others are present in the office every single day? Those are the kinds of things that we should be thinking about as leaders of businesses, and we got to make this not just work. We just have to make it work exceptionally well, and so that's certainly what is top of mind for me.
Yeah, I agree. We've learned a lot, I think, in the last 18 months about remote working and
Totally.
the whole idea of having to try and motivate and inspire people, not face to face, but through this sort of medium. And I think it'll, for sure, in my world, it's changed my approach to business for life as such.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
staying connected is a key aspect of that, and I know you must have a bulging inbox of requests. Do you have any tips that you could share on how you manage to stay on top of things? Is it having a fabulous EA?
I do. I do have just a fabulous team. You know, you're only as strong as the team around you, Bob. So I do have, you know, a fabulous team. But you may be surprised. I have a zero inbox, you know, kind of approach, and I've had this for, you know, probably a better part of a decade. So every night when I go to bed, I have zero unread emails in my inbox. And you know, there's like a method to the madness in terms of how I approach it. You know, when I get an email, there's either, you know, a 20-second response, a 20-minute response, or a 2-hour thinking process. And that's how I process it. If it's a 20-second response, you'll hear from me immediately.
Yeah.
If it is you know, 2-hour response, I typically will tell you I'm going to look at this at the end of the day or at the end of the week, and you know, I'll get that back. And if it's 20 minutes is on the same day, and 2 hours is by the end of the week. And so the team that works with me knows that they'll either hear immediately or at the end of the day or sometime in the following week, just based on how I process. And that's helped me, you know, stay sane and remain kind of, you know, on top of inbox. But it is quite a bit. You know, there's a great article that Andreessen Horowitz wrote in terms of maintaining productivity, and I looked at it last year, and it basically says that you have to really think about and optimize your calendar. That's the most important thing that, you know, leaders, executives must focus on, is where are you spending time? How are you spending time? Is it optimized on the areas that you need to really focus on? And, you know, I thought it was a good way, and I've started really implementing, you know, focused time for focused activities, so that, you know, you don't get dragged by 20 different things. You know, what's on your calendar really guides you to optimize for the right kinds of outcomes. And so it's a constant challenge, but there is some method to the madness.
Well, sadly, that seems to have absolutely rushed by. I don't think we have any more time. I've got an alarm telling me that we're on the limit. So, Yamini, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat. It was a fantastic session from everyone at Hubble and the wider HubSpot community. We congratulate you again on your new role at HubSpot and wish you all the very best. A big thank you to so many of you out there who've stayed with us to the very end. Thank you for that. Stay tuned for a sales panel discussion about sales enablement and the sales landscape from our very own Chief Sales Officer, Darren Smith, who'll be moderating that panel session, and it's coming up on the hour. So thank you and stay tuned for that. Yamini,
thank you so much for having me, Bob, and congrats to Hubble.
Thank you very much indeed.
Absolutely.
Take care.